Welcome to the Starfighter Podcast.
All right, we are back. We've got a great episode for you guys today, talking about WandaVision episode 4. But before that, if you're not already, please subscribe to the channel, leave a like, leave a comment, join the conversation. Let us know if we've missed something in our spoiler review, an Easter egg, or whatever it may be. We would really like to hear from you guys. All right, to help me steer the ship today is longtime friend Alex. How are you doing?
Doing good. Dom, how are you doing, man?
Pretty good. Glad to have you. Thanks for being on.
Glad to be back. Another week.
Yep. All right. Well, let's get right into it. Again, spoiler heavy review. I'm going to try and break down some things. And as always, maybe there's something that the audience has missed or we've missed. And we're going to try and pull those out from this episode. So the title is We Interrupt This Program. And it's a pretty good title. Definitely for this episode. Actually, before that, I did want to ask you, Alex, how you guys have been enjoying the show so far.
Yeah, the moment that the title screen of Marvel Studios appeared and you got that nostalgia of everything, it was like we were like screaming in the house, like, "Oh my gosh!" It's but the sad thing is, of course, you don't get that feeling of hearing everybody in the crowd and everything because you're not at the theater. But it's such a crazy feeling seeing this as a TV show rather than a movie. And I'm
Right.
thinking of replaying this whole series and watching it as like a movie. But so far, this show has been really, really well done. I know my wife; she's a fan of this show. She's just enjoying every second of it. Already getting onto it before I am. This episode in particular, we woke up at the moment it aired at 6:00 in the morning. So far, the nostalgia of watching it in like old sitcoms and in old like 50s, 60s eras, that is something that I really think is very cool. I feel like if anybody who's watching who thought, well, I don't know because I just didn't get it, or it's like you gotta understand this is a whole new phase, a whole new situation. We don't know what's going on. Nobody does. And so I think this is a really cool way to kind of introduce a whole new arc of what's going to happen in the MCU. We don't know what's going to go on. So far we're just there to sit for the ride.
Yeah, we're slowly like putting the pieces together. But yeah, there's still a lot of craziness yet to come. And I did want to ask you kind of about that sitcom feel and get your opinion, because we talked about it in our earlier episodes about that's not going to be for everybody, but
yeah,
I know, like me personally, I grew up and like my mom or older siblings, they had like some of these reruns of I Love Lucy and whatever it may be on. And you also get some definite Twilight Zone vibes as well. Are those things that have interested you in the past that you found some enjoyment? I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't like them as much as like modern day TV or movies, but I still find an appreciation for them.
It's one of those things where you just enjoy the things that started TV and the things that started a lot of Hollywood movies that we see today. So I mean, for me, I know my wife loves those. She already had some of the songs. She was already calling out these names of what they were, and so it was like, for her and her way she grew up, I mean, she loves it. And so to me, it brought that excitement. Like, okay, I see where they're going with this. I see what she's talking about, and getting that part into this modern day is so cool. So for me, it's more of not, even though I don't really see those, or I've never, I'm not much into those old stuff, to know that my wife is, or to see that just in general, trying to bring out stuff like that, I think is really cool. I think that's a cool thing to do, and for anybody who doesn't, I mean, I get it. It's definitely somebody who, if it's not for everybody, but they got to understand that just because they're doing it this way, you don't have to necessarily focus more on it. Focus on what's going on. Focus on why this is happening. If you're really into it, I think that's what you need to focus on.
Well, let's get right into the episode then. We don't get much of that sitcom feel anymore. Again, the title of this episode is We Interrupt this program, and it is more of our modern day style of TV. And right off the bat, we start the show with Monica
Mm.
Rambeau. We knew her as playing the character of Geraldine in the sitcom, but actual name Monica Rambeau from the comics. She's waking up from what the Marvel universe refers to as the blip, and so it's the aftermath. She's coming back to life. I'll tell you right now, Alex, I don't really care for that name blip. I wish they came up with something better than
It
that.
seems a little childish, like, oh, blip. It was just a
Yeah.
little blip, but I think that was because of Spider-Man, right? Far From Home. They just they made the name from that.
But she's waking up. You see, that's another thing about this show. The production value, you don't lose any production value. Like the effects of them coming back to life, from the dust and coming back into
Oh yeah.
human form looked incredible. Very intense. Gets your heart racing a little bit as she's running through the hospital and she's finding out that her mother died, but she can't really put that together because it doesn't make any sense to her, and because she's lost all this time, she's lost a few years. But take me through a little bit of your thought process on this scene and just your overall thoughts of the intro.
Yeah, well, for me, at first we watched it, and then I had to reverse for a second because I was like, wait, what's happening right now? And then it immediately occurred to me, yeah, that this was the exact moment that Hulk snapped his fingers in Endgame, like where he brought everybody back. And so I was actually getting like chills. I was like, oh my god, this is scary. Of how
Yeah,
I don't think people realize just like it's gonna come back on the Avengers again. Even though, and it's funny because of course the Sokovia Accords are back. They always blame the Avengers, even if these are catastrophic things, but they save them. They always get blamed. But if you think about it, because the way they brought people back, it did have more consequences than it did if they would have just left it alone. Because you think about people, because if this is how they come back, you have people who are losing loved ones for years. It's almost like that one show where they were lost on a plane. They come back years later and they're like, what's going on? Like, I forget what show it was called. But I know that what I thought about too is the people that were in planes or people that were
oh, is
in the
that
sky.
Manifest? Is that Manifest?
Yes, Manifest. It has
Yeah.
that same vibe because it's like they've been
Mhm.
gone. Technically, they're dead, but they come back and everything's different. So you got that, and then you also got scenarios where if they are coming back at the exact spot that they were gone, so you got dozens of people. They pretty much verified they got dozens of people, whoever in planes, whoever in a like in the water, in like a boat in the water. You got all these people that are just blipping out of nowhere. So not only that, you killed them a second time.
Blipping.
Blipping,
So lame.
so I wish they would have come up with a different name, but I think that the only reason they came up with, of course, is just to kind of get it simplified, but more of like a funny joke to it. And so when you hear it more in
Yeah.
a serious tone, like, yes, this person got blipped, it's kind of like I can't take it seriously, but
Right.
it's just, but at the same time, I think it's in this scene that we see in this episode, it really gets a kind of scary vibe, like a real, like terrifying thing that this is not a joke. This is like a serious thing that we're going to see how it affects everybody up until now. Because before, we've been all pretty much caught up in our reality, like in 2020 or the times that we were watching the whole 10 years of movies. We were, it's like we were on the ride with these heroes, but now we're in a situation where they're on their own. They're in this whole new predicament that we have just it's nuts. And so I think that whole first scene really kind of like set the stone as far as how this new MCU is going to go on is from that event.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we fast forward just a little bit, and it's right to the point leading up into episode 1 of WandaVision. So Monica reunites with S.W.O.R.D. We find out that she's a captain in the ranks, and she's paired up with FBI agent Jimmy Woo. And so she meets him over by Westview, by the sign, the town sign. What happened here was that he lost someone in like the witness protection program, but the bigger story here is that he's finding that no one knows about this person that went missing, and everyone has this idea that the town isn't even really in existence either, and that's what the two officers tell Jimmy and
Mhm.
Monica as well. Did you want to shed any light on this as well?
Yeah, so we follow with Monica Rambeau. We hear her, we hear kind of like segments of that Captain Marvel scene because she was there when she was with Captain Marvel in that movie. She was the little daughter, and so her mom was the
Right.
fighter pilot, and so she was the one that established S.W.O.R.D, the new S.H.I.E.L.D. But it seems like as if S.W.O.R.D was always there for a while as a contingency plan for if S.H.I.E.L.D were to ever go down. I don't know when they established when they came back.
Because it's supposed to be Shield's counterpart,
Right.
but Sword is also supposed to be a little more aggressive than Shield as well.
Okay. See, and that for me, I'm starting to do my own research because I have no idea who this. So I've always stuck with Shield. I've never heard of Sword up until this point. So it'll
I think
be
it's pretty
interesting to see where
cool.
that
Yeah,
goes. So, but as what you were talking about, so when we get to where we are now, it seems as though we're finally getting some answers as how this town is actually a real town. It made me think of because the police officer is like, I've never heard of this town before. I'm in Eastview, and so I think what we're seeing here, based off of what what we're going to talk about later down the road, is that it's masked by potentially Wanda. So far, all eyes point to Wanda being the person that's making this all a reality.
is she
But
controlling those two officers too? Do you think? Because why don't they even
see,
acknowledge the sign right there?
and that's the thing. I think it's more of I was thinking about it just now. It's that one. It was like that one show, Twilight Zone, where
Right.
really it's even though it's there, she put them on like this. I would say like a spell, but also like this way of thinking that this town isn't real. And even when Jimmy Woo, he was like telling Monica, "Hey, are you getting this weird feeling like we shouldn't be here. We shouldn't be walking to this area." Because I think if Wanda is masking this area, not only is she saying this isn't real, but she's saying step away, keep away from this area. And I want to say that there are so many different kind of shows or movies of characters who do this kind of thing in different shows, mind you, where it's like they're masking this location, but not only are they shielding it, they're kind of like pushing it away from people's minds to make it seem like this is just a threat. Stay away from this area, and so it'll always be an area that it'll be isolated by itself.
Right.
So I think that's what's happening. But I'm sure we'll get more answers. But yeah, it's more, and it's weird because it's all like TV glitchy, like a shield. It's not like some weird. It doesn't look like her power. It's all like a
Yeah.
glitch, like a TV thing, and so it leads me to believe that maybe something else is entirely going on here. So
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit towards the end of the episode. We'll save that for like some
yeah,
speculations and theories going forward. But Monica does step closer and she starts to touch like that force field and she gets pulled in. And then we cut to our reintroduction of Kat Dennings' character, Dr. Darcy Lewis, that we have seen before in the Thor movies.
yes,
And she meets up with Jimmy, and she's the one that discovers this broadcast of the WandaVision show.
yeah.
What do you think about her character in this show? And like, are you a fan of hers? And you think she added something here to this episode?
I think that when we were watching her in Thor, she was always the funny, like geek character. I always liked watching her. It was just like funny, just making me always laugh, kind of a thing. I think she played a good role, a good supporting role. So to see her, we haven't seen her since Thor 2. I want to say Thor 2.
Yeah, I think so.
And that's a long time ago. And either way, if it was that long ago, I mean, it's nice to see old characters that they have on their roster to come back whenever they need it. And I think that really forms a good foundation to this next phase of the MCU where it's like you can now bring anybody you want whenever it fits the script. And I think that's really cool to just get actors like her or actresses or anybody to really fit the story. So like Jimmy Woo with him, and the last time we saw him was with Ant-Man and the Wasp. When I first saw him do the little card trick, I'm like, you got that from Ant-Man. He practiced. He was the one that taught you that. And so it was kind of a cool thing that they bring all these little Easter eggs from all the movies. And so you get that nostalgia feeling. So for her coming back and to really be the forefront, because before it was Natalie Portman's character that really found like Thor and got and got all that, but to now have her kind of like step up to the plate, who is it, Darcy's character, to step up to the plate and find out what's going on here, it's really making these background characters more important, and I like that. It's really bringing everybody back and seeing that everybody has a place in this Marvel universe, and so it's just something to really enjoy. And again, it was funny to see how the way she was watching the show, because she was watching the sitcom, so you see it's like we're like the audience along with her.
Yeah.
And it was funny to kind of like see how she's all getting invested like we are, like when we were all laughing about the sitcom
that
and
was
stuff.
Cool,
But if you notice, there were some scenes that she was seeing that we didn't see, because that's when they found like Monica. I would say, I forgot her other name in the show. Geraldine. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there were some scenes that we never saw, but like I was telling, because my wife was like wondering like why is that? So where are we in this? Like we're basically of course we're the audience. We're watching everything. Now of course she's her own audience and her own warrior. So like there's a scene of how they saw. If you notice, Geraldine's just sitting there with her newspaper, and then we see Wanda just kind of walking around the city, and the way they were talking about this sitcom, as if there's more episodes in the 50s era. There's like more episodes that we didn't see, and then they were saying, "Oh, why does it keep changing generation of sitcom eras? And there's more episodes here and there." And there's like more scenes, even though they're not as important. It's just it seems like we're watching all the important parts that are happening. Right. So it's interesting that she discovered this, and she tied it to an energy that produces some sort of radiation from old TVs. But now it's interesting because that radiation is the same kind of radiation that goes alongside with the Infinity Stones, gamma radiation. It's interesting how this radiation and all that other stuff that they talk about, this energy, comes from the same source, Wanda's powers, the Infinity Stones. And so I think there's something to that we might see in the future.
Yeah, I agree. We'll touch on that a little bit more as well. But first I was going to mention that Darcy, she begins this discovery by seeing episode 1, and then again it's starting to play out and get closer to where we are in the series. But they're also putting together who these actors are in real life, in reality. And what's interesting is that they found just about everyone, but they didn't mention Agnes and they didn't mention Dottie. And I feel like there's been a lot of speculation on both of those two characters and who they really are.
They didn't find Dottie?
No, I don't believe so.
That's interesting. I only thought it was Agnes.
Yeah, I think it's both of them. I think both of them are going to play a really important role later on. I mean, a lot of people are saying Agnes is Agatha.
Agnes is definitely one. Yeah, they're thinking she's the this mystic person called Agatha Harkness. Harkness. It's like very obvious if it's not, or
So they finally spot Monica, and again we catch up to where we last saw her in last week's episode, where she's having this confrontation with Wanda. But now it zooms in, and we start to see how it really unfolds. Because again, another thing to realize is that Wanda is kind of trimming the video and only giving you just what she's allowing you to see, right?
Right.
But we get more context behind that scene from last week, that confrontation. And we see just like how upset Wanda gets and her reaction, and activating her powers and pushing Monica through those walls, and like ultimately through the force field, landing into the field. That's another thing that I wanted to talk to you about, Alex, is because we know from the comics, Monica Rambeau becomes another Captain Marvel,
Right.
right?
Yeah, I
Does she?
believe so. Yep.
Yeah. Does she already have her powers? Because if you
See,
think
in her.
about it, someone getting thrown through all those like brick buildings and
Oh,
just
right. No,
tossed
I know.
like
I'm
so
like, your
far, like
back should be. You should be dead.
she would be gone. Yeah.
I thought she cracked her neck or at least something when she came
Yeah.
down and she was just on the ground, like. And I'm like, oh my god, how do you survive that? Unless it was either unless Wanda didn't want her, but Wanda seemed like she was out for blood as soon as she realized that she doesn't belong there, and that's what's
Right.
really
She
scared me
says you're
was
trespassing. Yeah.
right, and that whole thing really like got me all like freaked out to see Wanda in kind of like that villain role, like what's going on now? Why are you doing this? But no, you're right. Monica should have powers from when it comes to energy, alteration, superhuman, speed, fight, strength. So I don't know. Maybe she already does. Maybe she'll establish it later.
Yeah. Because I'm pretty sure we're going to see her in Captain Marvel too. And I
Right.
think she's going to take on the mantle as the next Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess we'll find out. Does she have her powers? It would make sense that she already has them at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So now Vision comes in, and this is what everyone's
Yes.
talking about. Again, we only saw a little bit of this scene last week, but now we're seeing stuff from the eyes and viewpoint of Wanda. Vision asks, is Geraldine still here?
Mm.
And Wanda says she had to leave or something like that, or she left. She turns around to see Vision, and such a scary sight to see Vision like in his like dead form, where he's like completely gray and has
Yeah.
this
Eh,
huge hole
eh,
in his
yeah.
head
Which we
from
see in Infinity
the
War.
stone.
That's exactly how he
Right.
died. Yep.
But how he's still talking, and it was scary, man. It was something else.
I literally like just grabbed my seat and I was just like, no way. And I was telling my wife because this reminded me of a scene in an old show called it was the show Heroes. I don't know if you ever seen that show. And
A little
it
bit,
was
yeah.
just yeah. And in that show, there's a scene where this hero that everybody loved he got killed by this villain who was able to absorb all everybody's powers. Well, long story short, they capture him, but they wanted to bring their the guy that he killed back. And so they had somebody who was able to convince and able to like convince you to do whatever you want, convince the villain that you are this person. You are the person that you killed. And all his memories, all his traits, everything. And he was able to morph. And so as soon as he was commanded to do that, he was able to morph into the guy that he killed. Now it was as if he was that same person, like nothing ever happened. But deep down he's dead and he's played by somebody else. And so that scene reminded me of this because later in that show, the guy realized, I'm dead, am I? And this isn't my real body. And so and he was gone. And so this is the exact thing where I told her, I'm like, think about what happened to the butterflies and the little sparrow, the little stork that was in the baby room when Wanda and Vision were making the baby room. They were
Yeah.
inanimate objects, and yet she was able to bring them to life.
Right.
I think this is where it gets creepy. Is that more than likely, what if she had took his body
From
and
Wakanda, right?
yeah, and more than likely, maybe she's using it and reanimating it. And
Oh,
just
yeah.
and for him, he has all his characteristics back. He has all his memories and everything. but she has to use all her powers just to do that. And of course, we see here where she kicked Monica out. She kind of lost control there. And so when she sees him, maybe that was like a quick flicker of like, oh, I'm losing control here. Hold on, let me mask him up again. It could very well
Yeah,
be that
that's
the
what I was gonna
disturbing
say.
thing. Yeah,
That's what I was gonna say is because she sees him, you know, in this state, where he's dead. That's what he really is, and she closes her eyes. You see, she look because she scares herself a little bit, right?
right,
She closes
right.
closes her eyes and opens them back up, and now you see Vision is, like you said, probably reanimated, brought back to life from her
Yep,
perspective,
yep,
and Vision says, "We don't have to stay here," and Wanda says, "Yes, this is our home," and he asks, "Is it?" And
right.
she says, "Yes, I have everything under control." But she doesn't. She, like you said,
No.
she's losing control.
Mm-hmm.
She's completely losing control.
Yep.
Now we go back to Monica in the field, and the S.W.O.R.D agents are starting to um, come to her side, and this is again where we left off in last week's episode, and we just see her. We see Monica say, "It's Wanda. It's all Wanda," and so now they're starting to figure out more of what's going on,
Yep.
and cut back to Wanda and Vision. She says, "What should we, watch tonight on TV?" They sit down on the couch with the kids, and I believe now we're hearing some '80s rock music, probably letting us know what's gonna come, like what era is gonna come next week. That's how this closes out our episode. But yeah, I want to do more speculation and any like final thoughts that you have on the episode, and then kind of like any theories of what we're gonna see here pretty soon, Alex.
Yeah. So, everything that happened after that, I mean, they're obviously making it now official that she is the one that's doing this. She has the power to. We're seeing her power really fledge out, and now it's like, okay, how does she get there? Why is she doing this? Well, ever since after Endgame, we know that she went to Tony's funeral, and then all's well that ends well. But I don't, not for her. She had Vision. She had her brother. She had Cap. Cap would confide in her a bit and hear her out. Hawkeye helped her a lot. But now three of them, are definitely gone. Hawkeye, he's with his family. She has essentially nobody. As much as she's part of the Avengers, she is alone. And so it's as sad as it is, we can kind of see where the motivation is coming from as far as why
Yeah,
she's doing
exactly.
this. And so how she gets there, there's so many theories out there. There's so many speculations. I, on the other hand, think that, of course, if she's the one that's doing this, she has to. There has to be more than that. And if they're going to tie it to the comics, we're talking Agnes, which is Agatha Harkness. And I had to look up her character because there's a lot of things a lot of old stuff, but there's new stuff in the comics that kind of foreshadow what can they do, because in the comics she's a mentor to Wanda. She helps her kind of like control her powers, and in the comic books it's called chaos magic, because this kind of power is able to manifest different realities, manifest different things, and be able to do whatever she wants at will. And I think that because she got the power from the stone, we see now it's more than just what we have seen in the movies. She's now developed this new power that she is able to do more than what she can before. Because before she was still training, she was still trying to figure out, who she is. And
Right.
I think now we're seeing maybe she made a deal with Agatha. I know they're talking about Mephisto, who is essentially like the devil of the Marvel universe. I've only ever seen him in like the old '90s Spider-Man cartoons, and he was more of like trying to invade Earth, and Spider-Man would always find ways to like, because he was in a different reality, a different universe, a different realm.
Yeah.
It was just more of like that dark tone that they referred to him as that being. So not essentially the devil, but being in a different reality of like how Dormammu was with Doctor Strange, kind of a thing.
Right, and the movies are putting more of a science-y spin on things as well too,
mm-hmm.
and especially like what you were saying with the stones and like the cosmic universe.
Yeah, Kevin Feige said that he wants to make everything more cosmic related, more, scientific science, and everything that's what they're pushing for in this new phase is more of the cosmic side of things.
Yeah,
And
I
if
like that
they're
too.
yeah, I do too. Yeah, so if they're going to go that way, it would only make sense that this could be a reason why Doctor Strange is interested, because of course Agatha Harkness was also part of this in the Strange Academy. She was affiliated with this in the comic books, where they would train people who had these abilities to control them. And so we can potentially see that maybe she's just getting help from Agnes, even though Agnes said to her, like, stop, don't say anything, stop, immediately, don't talk about why we're here. She could be the gatekeeper, so to speak, the one that's keeping everything at bay.
Right.
For that way Wanda can have the life that she wanted. Or because now that we see her kids in the comics, Mephisto used those kids as like a way to drain her powers.
Yeah.
So there's so many things that could really bring out this.
I think he
as
like
to what's
uses
going
them.
on.
I think he kind of uses them to like as like leverage to manipulate her a little bit
Right.
too, because he knows like her desires to have this
Yes.
normal life, right?
Yeah.
Live a
Yeah.
normal life, or what
Right. And that was
she
the whole
wants with Vision.
House of M comic book series, where she creates this world for her. Like you were saying, that she wants a life. She wants a normal life, and she never did, unfortunately. And I can understand that. It's like you want, after losing your brother, after losing all of your loved ones, it's like you just want some normalcy. And so this could be that story just put into the MCU's way, because they've always found ways to tie in the comic books, but they always do it in their version, because it's a movie comic book. It's their own writing of another comic book. And so it could be that, and we can very well see. And I told my wife, I'm like, instead of saying like, because there was a scene where she in House of M in the comics where she said no more mutants, and immediately by doing that she wiped like 90% of them. We could potentially see her trying to wipe out the Avengers. She could, if she's gonna set up for the for kind of like a villain part. You live long enough to see yourself become the villain. She has all the recipes to do that. We see her already fighting Monica, taking her out, and everybody is already scared of her. During the Sokovia Accords, she was the reason why that started.
Right.
And so the world, even Vision told her, like, if you leave in Civil War, he told her, like, if you leave and do your own thing with Cap, everybody will still be afraid of you. And she even told Vision, like, I'm not worried about them. I'm worried about myself.
Yeah.
And we can very well see that the Avengers caused Vision's death. The Avengers caused her brother's death, even though it was all these other factors. Just like everybody around the world, they don't blame. Well, they don't blame the enemy. They blame the cause. Who started this from the beginning? The Avengers. She can very well say no more Avengers. She can very well try to be that next villain that we see, kind of like make a forefront, but potentially try to be there and hopefully be saved later down the road. But we'll see. We'll see how this comes about. There's so many different questions how they're going to push this out there. They already have the recipe that kind of shows that they're going to go through this route, but I guess it just all depends on what they have in mind. What is the MCU going to do with this material? But I think that it's going to be interesting to see Scarlet Witch become the villain. I think she will, and I think that'll be a cool thing to do, because in the comic book she is, but then at the same time she has joined up with the Avengers in the comic books. She has joined the X-Men. She's just, of course, looking out for herself, and she just wants a little bit of normal. And I think that we're going to see that develop.
So as we start to wrap up, two more things I just wanted to talk to you about briefly is X-Men you mentioned. And so my my introduction and like my love for comic books and these movies came from X-Men, the original cartoon show. And so that's definitely close to my heart. And we know, like you mentioned, Scarlet Witch has been a part of the X-Men series. And also, what's really interesting is that I don't know if when you looked up S.W.O.R.D a little bit, one of their members is supposed to be Beast, which
What?
is really
No.
cool.
Okay.
I was actually hoping that we might see like towards the beginning of the episode when they're like walking in the hall with the director of S.W.O.R.D, like maybe in like another room you might see like one of the
A
X-Men or
name.
something. It'd be
Ooh.
so cool. But yeah, there's been speculation on introducing the X-Men. Another thing I wanted to mention is that I learned recently that in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Scarlet Witch is not a mutant like she
Yep.
was
Yep.
before. Doesn't necessarily mean that she can't introduce the mutants, though.
Right, and that's what I looked up because we were talking about that, and it didn't make sense because well, it did only because at the time of her reveal, X-Men wasn't part of the MCU, of course, and so people question, well, she's supposed to be Magneto's kid and everything like that, but they did rewrite her character in the later comic book issues where she is an orphan and she was basically researched and her powers were stemmed from all this research. It wasn't so it kind of goes along with the MCU where her powers came from the stone and not from being a
Yeah,
mutant. And I think
right.
and so it just justifies that she is just this new character. And like I was explaining that if you think about it, it makes sense. People are probably thinking, well, why did he do this? Why didn't well think about it. She wasn't a big character for a lot of people up until recently. And in the comic books, there have been so many different times people changed people's characters to characters that people didn't really read a lot about. And so it's only that we're interested because now she's becoming a main character in the Marvel universe for many people. Is now we're invested like, okay, where does she come from? Who is she? What's she doing? But yeah, like to tie in with the X-Men, I mean, if they were to make the X-Men come to the MCU, it would be like a reaction from the snap, like the radiation from the stones. Again, bringing back the radiation part of it, that it
Uh-huh.
established the mutant gene, and then
Oh,
we're
okay.
bringing in kind of like a more like scientific, like a more like a reason why now they are here, why they're developing.
Yeah.
Like after the blip, now these people who have been blipped, they are now having powers because they came back from the stone, and not just from being born, coming alive in the just naturally, but like being reborn from the stone, from the radiation, and now they have a mutant gene. That could be a thing, but
That could be cool. Mm-hmm.
there's so many questions. You got to really write that out really well. I think that would be a really good way to justify it. Or you go the easy way, and we all know the easy way is if the multiverse of madness that's coming out is going to be a thing, you can just bring a new a reality from the X-Men coming in. Now I agree with my wife when she said that. She said if they do that, they better bring the classic characters. Don't
Oh
bring
yeah.
don't bring a don't let me give a good example. Don't bring a Wolverine
Like
that
Sunfire.
yeah, you know what I mean. Don't bring a character who is supposed to be Storm, but instead she does something else, or she is like she's not the classic Storm. She's just like a different version of that character,
Right.
or she's a different version of Wolverine. If you're gonna bring these characters, they have to be the classic ones that we know, that we all know. But to kind of make it a thing where everybody now has to deal with this, could be from the blip. It could be a thing where the blip is actually the start of the mutant gene that created mutants, which would be a cool thing and a whole new line of storytelling. But we'll have to wait and see on that end.
Yeah, absolutely. Some other really great points, and yeah, I think that would be an awesome idea to use the stones uh, to start that all off. Last thing before we wrap up, Hydra. Do you think they're behind this, and do you think maybe they're playing a part maybe alongside Agnes in controlling Wanda a little bit. Again, like I had mentioned, maybe they're the ones kind of giving her leverage, trying to manipulate her into using her powers this way, because this is, you can be this powerful and you can have all of these things that you want.
That's a good theory, and that's I think that would really show just how powerful Hydra is, because of course Shield is gone, and now we have Sword, and yet Hydra's still around. I mean, that would be a really cool thing to bring out. I think that
I would like that more than Mephisto,
I
honestly.
would like that more than Mephisto. I don't care for Mephisto. I never cared for a lot of these other characters I bring in, just because. And it's just not. It's not only the fact that they're all these dark demonic characters, but it's more of the way you've established the MCU. It wasn't so much of supernatural. It was more just trying to make it real, trying to make it fit in the real world. You know what I mean? And so even though they're
Yeah.
all, you know, obviously it's not real, but it's just the whole thing with Doctor Strange making it a whole. It's all science, really. It's all different universes that they're able to, have these abilities. It's the way the world is worked, the stones, and just from the outside in the universe, that all these crazy, cosmic beings are the reason why these powers and these things are coming to be. With Thor and all that.
Also, yeah, also when it comes to Hydra, they're very much based on the Nazis, right? Like
Right.
very much so. And that's like a kind of evil, a kind of bad that we can relate to on a personal level. And
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
have that within these comic books, within these movies, and it makes everything hit home much more so for us
Yeah.
because we can relate to that source of evil.
Right. And with that being said, that like even with Red Skull, he was trying to find all these super crazy natural things to rule the world. And that's pretty much how the Nazis were. They wanted to go and find these, mystic things that kind of, and it was like so out of this world, but that's how they were. And it does help to relate, and it would be a very cool turnaround for Wanda, because they created her, struck her with the help with Hydra, as we saw in those commercials, kind of like show the timeline where it kind of revisited why she became who she is. With the little toaster, it was the Stark Industries with the bomb, how she became,
Right.
and then you saw the Strucker watch, that how she even became in Hydra. Hydra's there, and it's interesting how does that tie in with Wanda? We know why Strucker did, because they created Wanda, but why is Hydra there? And it could be that maybe they are trying to brainwash her. Maybe they are trying to they found her again, and they're not done with her. And that would be a really great turnaround as far as her villain. Her true villain is the people who created her, essentially. And so for Agatha to kind of be like, instead of because she's supposed to be like this spokesman for Mephisto, maybe she's a spokesman for Hydra. Maybe even Mephisto is just a code name in the MCU to be in Hydra. Another villain in Hydra. That would be a cool thing too. But if Hydra's involved still, then maybe it'll tie along with Falcon Winter Soldier. Maybe we'll see. Maybe we'll give more reason to get Cap back, because I know they confirmed with Chris. They basically confirmed that Chris Evans is back as Captain
Yeah,
America, which
saw
I'm
that.
excited for. But now, and I liked how there was this interview about Chris Evans when he talked about bringing Cap back, and he said it perfectly. If you're gonna bring him back, make it worth it. Write it that makes sense. That still helps fulfill his character arc, because you essentially finished his arc. But if you're just gonna write him for like money reasons and all this other stuff, it's not gonna go well. But a good reason to bring it back too could be to help Wanda, maybe to potentially stop Hydra if they are the villains in this world. It'll be interesting. It'll be kind of out there, because Hydra is not really associated too much with what we're seeing, because it's usually associated with Captain America or anybody from that world. But technically, it is, because they created her and her brother with their abilities. So that would be a cool theory. That to me, that would probably be a little bit better to watch for many, and I think it'll be a lot more easy to digest, because then if you bring all this other stuff into it, it's going to be a lot. But who knows? I think it'll be cool.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say we've been really enjoying WandaVision so far, and It's been a great episode today, Alex, being able to
Yeah.
talk with you and having you on here. So really appreciate that.
Yeah,
But
man,
I
love
think
it.
that's going to do it. Yeah, I think that's going to wrap everything up for us here today at the Starfighter podcast. And we hope that you'll continue to join us on our next episode. Continue to like the videos, leave us a comment. Again, anything that you might have picked out that we weren't able to touch on, throw it out there. Would love to hear from you. But we will see you next time. We're signing off.
Later.